All right, we're in the final part of our deep dive into the 2024 Lancet Dementia Report. And here, we're going to tackle two absolutely crucial questions. First, how much does your body's overall health really affect your brain? And second, after a diagnosis is made, what's the evidence-based best way to provide care? You'll see the answers are a lot more connected than you might think. Let's jump in.
So let's start with that first big question. It's something the Commission really wanted to dig into, and they came back with some pretty powerful new evidence. You know, the thinking on this has really shifted. It's not just about single risk factors anymore. It's about how your entire body's system has a direct impact on your brain. And as you're about to see, the report makes it crystal clear. A healthy body is absolutely fundamental for a resilient brain.
And that leads us right into two terms the report focuses on big time: multimorbidity and frailty. Now, these aren't just buzzwords. The Commission uses a ton of data to show that your general health status is a powerful and, this is the important part, an independent predictor of your dementia risk.
Okay, before we dive into the data, let's just make sure we're on the same page. Multimorbidity. That's just a straightforward way of saying someone has two or more long-term health issues at once. Think diabetes and heart disease. Frailty is related, but it's a little different. It's more of a state where your body just has less in the tank, less resilience, which makes you much more vulnerable to things like infections or falls.
Now, this is where the numbers really start to tell a story. First off, this isn't some rare thing. Up to a quarter of all adults over 50 are considered to be frail. But here's the direct connection. One major study found that for every small uptick on a person's frailty score, their risk of developing mild cognitive impairment jumped by a whopping 66%. And if they already had MCI, that same increase in frailty pushed their risk of progressing to full dementia up by 14%. It's a clear, measurable path from physical vulnerability straight to cognitive decline.
In this slide just hammers that point home with data from two enormous studies. On the left, you've got a 30-year study showing that having even one major physical illness was linked to a 19% higher risk of dementia. But look at the right. A 15-year study found that when you have multiple conditions, that's multimorbidity, the risk shoots up by 63%. The message couldn't be clearer. The more your body is struggling, the greater the risk is for your brain.
And this quote right from the report just says it all. Frailty isn't just something that happens alongside the brain changes of dementia. It's an independent accelerator. Think of it this way. Even if you account for the classic Alzheimer's biomarkers and genetic risk, being physically frail adds its own separate and very significant layer of risk. It's like another highway leading to the same destination.
So if physical health is so critical for prevention, what happens once a diagnosis has already been made? Well, the Commission shifts gears here to focus on management. And the main idea is pretty simple. Care has to be holistic and it has to be centered on the person. The absolute core principle here is individualization. You see, dementia changes over time, so a one-size-fits-all plan is doomed to fail. The report really emphasizes that care plans have to be living documents, constantly adapting to a person's changing needs, whether those are physical, cognitive, or psychological, throughout the entire journey.
So what does that kind of high-quality care actually look like in practice? Well, this slide breaks it down. It's a whole strategy that goes way beyond just memory. It means staying on top of all the other health conditions, making the home safer, simplifying medications, and just as critical, it's about using behavioral strategies for difficult symptoms. And this is huge, providing real support not just for the person with dementia, but for the family and carers who are right there with them.
Now, the Commission makes a really important distinction here. They are huge advocates for a timely diagnosis for anyone who's showing symptoms. That's key for planning, for management, for everything. But, and this is a big but, they do not recommend mass screening for everybody. And why not? Because the trials have shown it just doesn't improve quality of life or the care people receive. It's about getting a diagnosis when it's actually helpful, not just for the sake of having a label.
Okay, so we've looked at physical health and post-diagnosis care. Let's zoom out now and see what the report's big, overarching conclusions are. These are the high-level takeaways that are really meant to guide policy and practice from here on out.
You know, the report's conclusions really paint a picture of both challenge and opportunity. The bad news? Yes, dementia numbers are rising around the world. But the good news is that the evidence for what we can do to prevent it and support cognition is stronger than it has ever been. The biggest problem they identified isn't what we don't know. It's that the effective things we do know, well, they just aren't reaching enough people. And while the new drugs are a breakthrough, their real-world impact is still something we need to be very careful and clear about.
So after all of this, after sifting through hundreds of pages of evidence and data,
What does the Lancet Commission really want us all to remember? They've managed to distill this entire massive report down into just a few essential messages.
This is it, the bottom line. If you take away nothing else from this report, this is what you need to know. The Commission boiled everything down to these 4 critical points, and they really cover the whole spectrum, from physical health to biomarkers, new treatments, and the timeless basics of good care. So let's just walk through each one.
First, and this was the big focus for us today, your overall physical health is a huge deal. The Commission doesn't mince words. Having multiple chronic illnesses in your middle years and being frail later in life aren't just connected to dementia. They are, and I quote, undisputed independent accelerators that actively speed up its arrival.
Second, a really important reality check on biomarkers. Yes, they're incredibly valuable for confirming the underlying biology in someone who already has symptoms, but they are not a crystal ball. A lot of perfectly healthy older adults have amyloid in their brains, so a positive scan all by itself does not mean you will definitely get dementia. It's just not that simple.
Third, let's talk about the new drugs. They are a massive scientific achievement, and they do show modest but real effects. But the report is very clear. These drugs come with huge costs. They demand intensive MRI monitoring, and they carry serious risks of side effects, like swelling or bleeding in the brain, which is known as ARIA.
And finally, the fourth and maybe the most important message of all. In this new era of exciting drugs and high-tech biomarkers, the most proven, validated foundation for managing dementia is still high-quality, compassionate care. Getting a timely diagnosis, using existing medications smartly, and providing holistic support for both patients and their families, that remains the absolute cornerstone. And that really is the ultimate conclusion of the 2024 Lancet Commission report.